Across the many dynasties that existed in China, the imperial harems were organized in a variety of different ways. Within the walls of the Forbidden City, the lives and actions of the women who lived there were fundamentally organized into a hierarchical structure. The women who lived in the palace during the Qing Dynasty were traditionally divided into 8 different classes, with the Empress sitting atop the hierarchy and the lowly servant ladies occupying the lowest rung. What were the prerequisites for getting into the Qing royal harem? During the Qing Dynasty, what was the daily routine like for the women who worked in the Forbidden City? What possible rights and privileges did they enjoy? And what heartbreaking stories could have been kept hidden behind the closed walls of the royal harems? Introduction to the Chinese imperial harems. Imperial harems were an essential component of the power structure of the Chinese imperial family. His harem needed to produce male heirs so that they might be trained to take their place on the dragon throne in the future, and this was necessary for the continuance of the dynasty. As a result of this, it is traditional for the royal family to search the entirety of China for appropriate consorts to add to the emperor's harem. The selection of xiunu, which literally translates to beautiful girls, was a rigorous selection procedure in which young, unmarried women sought to stand out from the crowd by being measured against unrealistic criteria. They were subjected to a battery of cognitive and behavioral evaluations, as well as a number of physical examinations that were repeated multiple times. Those who were able to make it through the challenging process and perform to the best of their abilities would be granted the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to serve the emperor as his concubines. As soon as they were chosen, the concubines pledged their allegiance to a rigidly hierarchical structure and an ongoing contest for the emperor's attention for their whole lives. It is stated that this kind of selection process, in which the most appropriate consorts for the emperor were culled out of a pool of candidates, dates back to the Qing Dynasty. Qing Imperial Harem, the selection process. Even though the procedure of selecting xiunu was carried out in Qing China, it was not the same as it had been in China during the preceding dynasties. This was because Emperor Shunzhi restricted the selection to only the families of the 8 banners, rather than the majority Han people. The 8-banner system was a military and administrative structure that was used by the Manchurians. It also referred to an aristocratic network of families that were both Manchurian and Mongolian. The Imperial Board of Revenue would obtain a list of suitable candidates for the selection process that took place once every 3 years through the various clan leaders and banner officials. This would help to expedite the decision-making process. A day would be chosen for the potential candidates to present themselves for inspection before the Gate of Divine Prowess in the Forbidden City, accompanied by the chiefs of their respective clans and other members of their families. It is estimated that between 100 and 300 eligible young women would take part in the initial screening of their appearance and behavior. Those who were determined to be suitable would be registered as a xiunu and put through a more rigorous screening procedure from among the bunch. This consisted of putting the remaining dozens of girls through a series of exams that evaluated their intellectual capacities, talents, and capabilities. Last but not least, those individuals who had made it through all of these trials would be invited to the ultimate selection that would take place at the Palace of Heavenly Purity. Here, the Emperor and the Empress Dowager would make their last decisions. In most cases, the candidates who were chosen stood out from the other applicants in terms of their attractiveness, health, talents, and most significantly, their family background. The hierarchy in the Qing Imperial Harem system. In the Qing Imperial Harem system, there were officially 8 different classes of women. The Empress was the only primary wife the Emperor ever had, and she was the one who held the ultimate authority at the top. She was to act as a significant ceremonial figure in the palace, take care of the harem, and keep the peace there while also meeting the expectation that she would be a model of Confucian ethics. The Empress was in charge of the 6 Western palaces and the 6 Eastern palaces, which were both housing locations for the concubines. There were only supposed to be a maximum of 1 imperial noble consort, 2 imperial consorts, 4 consorts, and 6 imperial concubines. This was the order of precedence going downward. Due to the fact that these ladies held significant power, they were each given their own official residence, complete with a staff of at least 6 and no more than 8 attendants. The noble lady, the first-class attendant, and the second-class attendant all held positions that were lower on the hierarchy. Because there was no limit placed on the number of women, they were forced to live in close quarters with one another and had very little power. The emperor's love life. The imperial court made a concerted effort to organize the emperor's sexual life because it believed that a prosperous harem was an indication of a powerful empire. Court officials were responsible for painstakingly keeping precise records of the emperor's daily sexual partners, even though he had a rotating cast of concubines. Because emperors were often spoiled for choice, it was common practice for eunuchs to present wooden tablets to the emperor that listed the names of concubines. These tablets were displayed in front of the emperor. As soon as the emperor flipped the tablet of a particular concubine over, it indicated that he wanted to have sexual relations with her on that particular night. After having her body washed and scrubbed, the concubine who had been chosen would then be stripped naked and placed in a heavy blanket before being carried to the emperor's quarters by eunuchs. Before entering the emperor's rooms, concubines were required to disrobe completely so that it could be verified that they did not carry any weapons that could endanger the emperor. Life in waiting, passing time. If they were not required to accompany the emperor to official ceremonies, the imperial concubines' days likely consisted of little more than lounging around the palace all day. As a result of this, there was an abundance of opportunities for them to pass the time and enjoy themselves within the palace. During the Qing Dynasty, imperial concubines would frequently busy themselves with participating in artistic and musical performances, as well as board games such as Chinese chess and other such activities. It was reported that during the winter months, the members of the Manchu royal family enjoyed a peculiar pastime of playing in the snow. Not only would the concubines enjoy playing in the snow, but the emperor himself would also get in on the action and join in on the fun. Other popular pastimes in the imperial harem included going on lengthy strolls through the gardens, fishing, swinging on swing sets, and caring for the animals in the palace. There were over 100 cats and dogs living in the imperial palace at one point, and appointed caretakers were given the responsibility of ensuring that the animals had adequate nutrition and remained in good health. Life in waiting, food, and fashion. The life of an imperial harem attendant was held to a specific standard in comparison to that of a commoner, and this standard applied to everyone from the highest-ranking empress to the most lowly second-class attendant. This was notably clear in the manner in which the concubines loved their cuisine, as well as the clothing they wore. Food of the finest quality was abundant in the imperial kitchen, which was manned by expert chefs and nutritionists. The food was imported from diverse locations across the world. Although each of the emperor's concubines had the right to exquisitely prepared meals, the number and variety of such meals varied according to the concubine's rank. For instance, it was stated that each day the empress would receive 21 pounds of excellent beef, but a second-class attendant would only receive 5 pounds of the same. When it came to style, the Manchurians were famous for the bright colors and intricate designs that they incorporated into their garments. In more solemn settings, especially when the emperor and the empress were present, the color bright yellow was commonly used to denote their presence. To make it easier to tell the lower-ranking concubines apart from the higher-ranking ones, the rest of the harem would be clothed in champagne, while the higher-ranking ones would wear golden yellow. An imperial concubine was required to dress to impress and had access to a variety of different pieces of clothing, ranging from the formal lifu and jifu to the changfu and bianfu, which were considered to be more casual. The harrowing harem, survival of the fittest. Even while the imperial harem system was supposed to serve as a pillar of support for the emperor's reign, in practice it frequently turned into a bloody battleground riddled with plots, deceit, envy, and tragic outcomes. Being an imperial concubine was not an easy task, since one had to compete with other women for the attention of the emperor, and also reproduce in order to advance in position. Should one get off on the wrong foot, one runs the risk of being demoted and losing favor with their superiors. Promotion is not the only possibility. During the reign of Emperor Qianlong, this unfortunate end befell a number of the emperor's concubines, including the empress herself. In the year 1765, it was said that steppe Empress Nara made a terrible error in judgment by cutting her hair, which, according to the customs of the Manchu people, is an act linked with grief. In a fit of rage, Emperor Qianlong made a concerted attempt to strip her of her authority. He took away her privileges and reduced the number of court ladies who attended to her. In the year 1778, still another concubine, Lady Wang, was demoted after it was discovered that a palace maid had passed away as a result of injuries sustained from the brutal beatings that Lady Wang had ordered. In a similar manner, in 1788, within the span of 16 days, Consort Shun fell 2 ranks to that of a noble lady for reasons that are unknown. The tragedy of being the favorite. Although it may appear that all that is required to rise up the ranks is to do one's best to win the favor of the emperor, being the emperor's favorite concubine was not always a sign of good things to come. During the late Qing era, this was the tragic end that befell the adored consort of the Emperor Guangxu Zhen. Consort Zhen was a vivacious and free-spirited woman who enjoyed learning about new cultures and technology. This was a stark contrast to the conventional and repressive royal palace where she was raised. Her bubbly attitude managed to win the favor of Emperor Guangxu, who became a frequent companion of hers during his leisure hours. Because of her propensity for disobeying orders, Consort Zhen quickly became a source of dissatisfaction for the formidable Empress Dowager Cixi. Not only did she have the emperor's undivided attention, but she also had a predilection for breaching the regulations. In addition, during the reign of Emperor Guangxu, significant socio-political instability and internal disagreements within the court plagued the nation at a time when the glories of the Great Qing were beginning to decline. Consort Zhen was aware of the emperor's well-intended plans to improve what was widely regarded as a failing and antiquated imperial system, and she frequently urged the emperor to move through with his changes. As a consequence of this, Consort Zhen would frequently step in and exert her influence over the decision-making process, which led to Cixi demoting her as a form of retribution for her perceived brash behavior. In the year 1900, when Beijing was under attack by the Eight-Nation Alliance, Emperor Guangxu and Cixi escaped the city, but they left Consort Zhen behind in the Forbidden City. It was said that before Cixi left, she gave orders to the eunuchs at the palace to kill Consort Zhen by putting him in a well and drowning him. The Forbidden City now operates as a tourist attraction, and one of its attractions is a well that was used to find and remove her remains afterwards. Entering the Imperial harems, was it all worth it? In the same way that tales of imperial concubines such as Consort Zhen continue to fascinate people today, retrospective analyses of life in the Chinese imperial harem are becoming increasingly popular. The palace was not without its share of troubles, despite the fact that living there promises to be a life of luxury for anybody who inhabits it. Before these young women entered the palace, did anyone try to forewarn them about what was to come and prepare them for it? Was it all worth it for them to spend their whole lives trying to win the elusive attention and favor of the emperor? Would these women have gone through with the Xiunu selection process, even if they had realized how challenging things were going to get in the years to come? It was impossible for everyone to live a life that consisted of constant plotting, the fear of making mistakes, and the pressure of having to produce an heir, but some people did manage to pull it off. However, maybe the most difficult thing to bear was the isolation that came along with the grandeur. As the great master poet of the Qing Dynasty, Li Bai, so beautifully expressed in the poem that follows, the price of a life of luxury was the mournful solitude that resided behind the locked room doors in the huge and lonely palace. This was the price that had to be paid in order to live a life of luxury. We hope you liked this video, subscribe to the channel if you're a history addict, and please let us know about what civilization or time period we should talk about. Also, watch another video here.